Hello and welcome to The Insider, a show designed to clue you into the biggest news, events and announcements inside the video games industry, discussing with you some things you may know, some things you may not, and the glue that holds it all together is a little bit of my own opinion. My name is Paul James, thank you very much for watching, let's kick off another episode.
Game of the Year.
So just like the subject of last week's episode, which was about PSX, the Game Awards are now only a week away. The Game Awards, the precursor to what is about a 2 or 3, maybe even 4 day long binge in the US that is all about upcoming video games and acknowledgement of the classics that have come this year, kicks off next Friday. And at that event, we're expecting to get announcements somewhere in the mid-teens in number. And in this week's episode, I'm going to predict what some of those are. Now, I'm only going to focus on 4 main pillars in this week's episode. The reason for that being that I spoke about Sony in great detail last week when it comes to PSX, and I'm sure there's going to be an ounce of crossover between those two events. So what I want to talk about are 4 key pillars that include Microsoft, Sony, third parties, and then the indie representation. So buckle in and let's do this.
Here it is. The Game of the Year at the Game Awards 2016 is Overwatch.
So let's start with Microsoft, probably the company that is hardest to pick out of the entire batch. And the reason for that being that, sure, this gorgeous Xbox One X has arrived, it does incredible things, but there's no games coming to the Xbox platform at this current stage. We've seen some great games over the journey. Gears of War 4 is exceptional, Halo 5's done really well, the Forza games are great, Quantum Break was really cool. We've got some cool games on the way in Sea of Thieves and Crackdown 3. And honestly, I don't expect us to get anything more than those 2 games at this particular event. Phil Spencer recently got out there and started recruiting first-party studios. And that's a great sign for the future of Xbox. But that was only very recently, and I don't expect us to see the fruit of that until at least, at the very earliest, E3 2018. So what I'd expect to get out of Microsoft is an announcement relating to one of, maybe even both, of their 2 big games that we currently know of for 2018. Sea of Thieves and Crackdown 3. Crackdown 3 was originally meant to launch with the Xbox One almost a month ago, and then it slipped. Now, it was disappointing news for those who were really keen on the game, but the promise is that the game will be bigger, better, and more badass because of it. Maybe it's time for a release date. Microsoft, let's deliver. Sea of Thieves is a game that you can already see it. It puts a grin on my face every time I start talking about it. I had the great opportunity to go play it at PAX Oz 2017, and I absolutely adored it. It is doing some wonderful things. It has that rare vibe that we've come to know and love from decades of classic games. A release date. The game's meant to come in early 2018. Give us a release date. Send us home happy. Because Microsoft, if you do that, you're already off to a good start, and it buys you some time to get your ducks in a row and then knock us out of the park as 2018 progresses.
Motherfucker. They killed the power around the world. We're gonna light it back up because this is far from over. In fact, it's only just begun. That's why we brought in you. You got the talent. Now you need the tech. Big things do far! Today, you throw grenades. Boom! Tomorrow, you'll be throwing cars. Ah! Forget dropping bombs. You're dropping buildings. Now it's time to get to work. Time to step up your boom.
Next up is Nintendo. And Nintendo are an interesting one to talk about because they've kind of got their 2 big hitters out of the way already. We've seen The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and it's right up there at the Game Awards, up to its nose in the Game of the Year competition, or in the Game of the Year vote. Mario Odyssey is in the exact same position. It only came out about a month or so ago, and it's been incredibly well received. People are loving it. They've also released a bunch of other awesome games over the course of the year. Mario & Rabbids, which technically is a Ubisoft game, but leverages the Mario license. There's been ARMS, there's been Splatoon. They've really got a lot of their big guns out of the way already. And we know that there's still a few to come. We know that Metroid Prime 4 is officially a thing. There is a new Pokemon game. Don't expect to see or hear anything from that one at the particular event. It's just too soon. Metroid Prime 4 is a candidate to see a proper formal trailer. I don't expect anything to be gameplay, just CG. It's a candidate. I don't expect to see anything from Yoshi and Kirby because they'll just get laughed off the stage. And maybe, just maybe, and because the game's got a bit of a history of doing something at at the Game Awards anyway, I would expect that the supposedly still on track for release this year DLC to Breath of the Wild, single player kind of proper campaign sort of stuff, a full-on expansion, you've got to think that at the Game Awards, that's when we get a new trailer, that's when we get a date. Maybe it's one of those and it's available now sort of moments. It'd be a great thing of Nintendo to do. They did say it was coming out this year, so why not? It would make sense. Indies. They're a hard one to pick. There's some really big high-profile indies that have taken centre stage at the Game Awards in the past. No Man's Sky was chief among them. Now, that game flopped in the end. Game sucks. It wasn't received well. It's got its little cult audience. Good luck to you guys. Continue to enjoy the game. But it does seem to have kind of nerfed the impact a little bit of some of the indie games that have been revealed there at the past. People are a little bit more cautious now when they're kind of renouncing their big indie game and really, really ambitious indie games, but they're a little bit more hesitant about getting up on center stage and showing it to the masses because the hype levels can get out of control and it can get too much for a small studio with not a lot of funding, with not a lot of personnel to really keep under wraps. There's some cool games coming. I wouldn't rule out some. We're aware of Cappy, and Cappy is responsible for Below, a game that was supposed to come to the Xbox One back at launch. So that's nearly 4 years ago. It still hasn't released yet, and I feel like that's one of the prime candidates to get a trailer and a date, and off we go. Shovel Knight's the sort of game we've seen there in the past. Maybe we see another game from those guys. It's a little bit hard to tip when it comes to the indie space here. You only expect to hear one or two games. Maybe Telltale do their thing. Look, tune in, give it a look. The indies are going to be a really interesting one to take a look at. The fourth main pillar here to discuss, and probably the one where I can kind of really open up the most about, is the third parties. The reason for that being, there's so goddamn many third parties. The one that immediately springs to mind, and I think it's maybe a little bit driven by my personal hopes and dreams more than anything else, but I'm really, really hopeful that Borderlands 3 shows its face. The game has been teased. We've seen a tech demo that kind of showed how the graphics engine was working and lighting and all those sort of things. That was at GDC earlier this year. We've seen plenty, enough chatter about it over the course of this year. We know that the team at Gearbox has kind of shifted their work all onto the game. It's time. Let's do it. Another one that needs to be discussed, and it's strange that all these games to this point are already coming from Take-Two, but it's worthwhile considering the possibility that Red Dead Redemption 2 might be there. Not in any great capacity, maybe just a new story trailer, but it's not out of the realms to expect it to possibly be there. The reason for this being that Red Dead is just not the same size and magnitude that a GTA game is. When Rockstar comes out to go promote GTA, they don't need a platform like E3 or the Game Awards or anything like that. The game sells based on the name itself. The Red Dead franchise, Revolver was mediocre. Redemption 1 was amazing, Game of the Year sort of candidate, and still discussed by many as one of the great games of that particular console generation. But it doesn't have years and years of development, years and years of talk, years and years of anticipation and acclaim. So it could still potentially do a little bit of a leg up. The Game Awards could be a great stage for that. Look for some stuff from Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers tends to get out and support the Game Awards. Maybe we'll see the next work from the Rocksteady guys. They worked on Batman, as in Arkham Origins, Knight, not Origins actually, not Origins, City, Arkham Asylum and Arkham Knight. They did some great work in that particular space, and they've been pretty quiet now since the release of Arkham Knight. Maybe we see their new game. Square-Enix is one to take note of. Perhaps we'll get to see Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the long-rumoured one. Maybe we'll see something from their Japanese studios. More likely to see that at PSX a couple days later. But it's not out of the realm. Square-Enix loves an opportunity to kind of beat its chest a little bit, so fingers crossed. They're just a few of the third-party games that I expect to show up. Let me know in the comments with some of the others that you are anticipating. Maybe it's Anthem. Please let it be Anthem. Let me know in the comments with some of the ideas that you have.
Paul, you ready to go?
We're just grabbing some supplies. Just about ready.
What are you going to use today?
I decided to go with the Colossus.
I'm going to use my Ranger. Try out some new upgrades.
So that wraps up another episode of The Insider. Please let me know down below about some of the games that you are anticipating from the Game Awards, how they may or may not interact with PSX, whether they are exclusive to the Xbox platform, Nintendo, third parties, indies. Indies I kind of came up a little bit dry on there. Throw some of the cool indie ideas down there in the comments that I perhaps should have thought about, because there's a lot of cool stuff coming to this particular Game Awards. Geoff Keighley is promising somewhere in the mid-teens in terms of the number of game reveals there, both new and existing. There's a lot to look forward to, and I only probably rattled off about 10 games myself. So there's stuff that I haven't even thought about here or discussed here that you might be thinking about as well. So let me know down below. In the meantime, please make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel, where you can catch up with weekly episodes of The Insider, of Patched, of the Games Club. There's Player 2 Plays, there's trailers and a whole bunch more. All that stuff can only be found on our YouTube channel. So please make sure to like, share and subscribe so you can catch up with all of it. If you love written content, please make sure to visit our website, player2.net.au, where you can catch up with all the awesome written content. That is reviews, previews, features, opinion pieces, there's news, there's a whole bunch more, the writer's draft. There's great stuff that can only be found at our website. We've got some of the best talent in Australia writing for us, so please make sure to go and check it out. It's great. And in the meantime, if you want to catch up with some more rolling updates, make sure to catch the website, at Player2AU on Twitter, myself at PaulJamesP2 on Twitter, and until next week, where all these things from PSX last week and the Game Awards discussed this week all kind of come to fruition, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.